Hello, everyone. Look at us starting on time for once. Okay. It feels like a lot's happened since last week, so I got a lot to talk about in just a second. But as we always start these streams, if you could put where you're watching from, I always like seeing where you guys are in the world, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And today we're going to do a leather exercise. I'm pretty excited about this one. Leather is one of my favorite materials to paint. So hopefully, if you feel like you struggle with this material, I can teach you something and you can use it in your own work. And while we're waiting for everyone to join in here, I'm going to finish up the marketing. And there's been so much good happening this past week that I guess I can get started now talking about some of it before we get started here. The first thing is last night, the Kubo winners were officially announced, and me, my roommate Tyler, and one of my really good friends, Key, better known online as Gawky, all placed in the finalists, so we all get the movie and the art book. And actually, last night, Tyler got in the top 3, and it was like this really cool thing because he wins the statue of Kubo, which I actually think is a better prize than the Nike shoes, which is what the first place winner gets. So I'm really excited to show you guys the figurine when it comes in. I'm sure whenever it does, I'll ask him if I can show it on the stream. And that was really exciting. So I want to give a big congrats to him. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's a contest that just finished on DeviantArt for Kubo and the 2 strings. And those contests, we kind of started it as a joke a while ago that we would enter them together 6 hours before the end time. And we've just kind of made it a habit. And it's just a chance for us to talk while painting and just have a good time. And I definitely recommend this for you guys if you have a group of friends, and why not? Why not enter it? Maybe it's not so much to win, but it's just to keep you going and do something that maybe is outside of your realm. Like I've never really done anything with such a Asian influence in my work before, and that was definitely part of a challenge, and it was great. I definitely struggled with parts of it, but I think it was good for me to step outside of my comfort zone, as I do think for many of you might feel the same. And one more, and then I will go ahead and officially get started here. I think I'm good. Let me double check everything. And okay. So officially, hi everyone, I'm Tim Von Rieden with cgcookie.com, and we do these weekly live streams every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time, and that's -6 GMT now because of daylight savings time, so we're at 6 instead of 5. And I usually post what we're going to be doing an hour or two before we get started, and I usually let you know the stream before what we're going to be working on. So today, it's all about leather working. But before we dive into it, I just have a few announcements, and then we'll get into it. First one is the reason we're doing the leather is because there's an exercise going on right now, and it is for these 6 items here, and it's to challenge your understanding on how to paint leather on different surfaces and angles and curvatures. So this is a really great challenge if you're looking to kind of, why thank you, oh show my show myo for following. This is a really great way to not only refresh your material understanding, but hopefully enhance it and improve it. And that exercise, the step-by-step, we were originally going to have it out this Friday, but we realized it's kind of a busy weekend with the holidays, so it's actually going to go out next Friday to give it some breathing room. Because this weekend, we're doing a big promotional sale for CG Cookie where Cyber Monday has kind of turned into the weekend where you can save 25% off the membership, and it's an annual one, so it's a pretty big package deal. We don't do this very often, so if you're looking to watch some of the tutorials we offer on the site, but haven't had the chance financially to reasonably say, yes, let's go ahead and do it, then this might be your opportunity. We're doing more casual streams. I did a lot with the Kubo one, but I'll probably be doing one this weekend. It's probably going to either happen Saturday or Sunday. I'm going to be doing a lot of editing on my Kickstarter book. I just literally scanned all 238 of them. Well, I thank you, Devil Cube, for following with the cube. That was clever. So I'm going to be doing a casual stream where I'm going to be editing my images. It's not the most exciting thing, but if any of you are interested in seeing how you go from a traditional scanned image into a final piece, kind of like the one that I did for my first sketchbook, where you can see how it has like editing along the edges where there's no paper texture. It's just the image on a white background. So I will be doing that sometime this weekend, and I'll announce it on the Facebook page and on my Instagram. And speaking of the Instagram, I'm doing a giveaway right now. I'm literally handing away 9 of these because every 1,000 followers I get on Instagram, I try to do a giveaway, and I've been so backed up that I've been pushing it to the side, but now I'm literally doing all 9. So if you want to win it, just go to @vonart on Instagram. You just like and comment, and you can possibly win one of them. And we're going to have 9 winners. I think there's already over 300 comments, though, so I get it in before Saturday because that's when I'm planning to pick the winners for it. And then as requested, Tijol asked if I could show the paper that was behind the image on my Instagram. This is the tissue foil paper that I got for my new packaging and shipping supplies for my sketchbooks. I love this. I kind of fell in love when I first saw it. And lo and behold, I actually found this at Target. And if you don't know what Target is, it's basically a super center that contains everything from food to video games to furniture. And this paper I fell in love with, so I ordered a lot, just under 1,000. And they came in, so I can literally like decorate my entire room with this paper, and that would be an interesting room display. Lastly is I've been working on a coffee bag illustration. Let me show you guys what it looks like so far. It's not completely finished, but this is something that I've been literally recording the entire process of. So if you want to see how to make something like this, I should have the tutorial ready before the holiday season, which will be less than a month from now. And I'm going to go through the process of taking on a challenge of freelance that you've never done before. And you have to go through all the components of, okay, what are the properties that we have to work with? What are the dimensions? What are the areas that I can work with? What is the safe areas? Stuff like that. And I think this is good for any of you that are interested in being more of a freelance illustrator and wondering not only how to get the job, but then how to go about creating it. And it's definitely a learning process with each new project, because not all of them are going to be just an illustration. Like just 2 months ago, I had to do a book cover, and there were challenges with that I didn't know I wasn't aware of. And now, especially with this coffee bag, there's a lot of things I'm learning with like bleeds and understanding where the folding on the packaging is going to be. So understanding where it's important to keep the illustration and where it's not. Well, I thank you, ProSky94, for following. So that tutorial will be out sometime next month. Like I said, this isn't finished. We're going to redo the artist down here and hopefully give it a better spin there. Okay, I think that's all I got. Let's see if going on my little notepad here. Oh, and yeah, that's it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. If you want to draw alongside with me, I put a download link to the PSD below. And basically what we're going to be doing is, I think we're going to do 3. We'll do 3 leather examples. One will just be leather on just a flat surface, and then we'll do it on a cylinder because I really do believe on inputting materials on the basic forms. And then lastly, we'll work on the Aviator hat that hopefully if you guys want to work alongside me, you can download and you'll have that ready. So leather is one of my favorite materials to work with. It's on pretty much every character that I do. Oops. And if you look at even some of my older work, I really try to add this worn texture look on everything to kind of showcase the what's a good word? Not fragility of it, but just to show that it has character. It's been worn, it's been used, because new leather is definitely different than a worn effect that you can put on leather. I'm definitely going to go more of the worn leather today because I think it has more interest to the viewer when looking at this kind of subject matter. And I'll go through on how to create this, and not only that, but how to create like a pattern. So you can see in her belt here how we got kind of a pattern going on. Well, I thank you, Ranmastrike, for following. And oops, let me put the comments over here. Oh, and before we get started, just so you know, if you want to ask me a question, please put at CG Cookie Concept before your question. That way, when I'm looking back and forth between the comments and what I'm working on, I can see it, and hopefully I can pick it up and answer it right away. It's like right now, Digital says, "Is that Nate's boot?" Yeah, you were the one that caught the Easter egg there. That is actually Nate's boot from one of my illustration pieces. So let me just give a quick little shout out to Digital for getting that right. So yeah, that's his boot that he's wearing there. It's kind of my little fun Easter egg to put into a practice example. So well done on spotting that, Digital. You earned the golden fridge for the day. There you go. Okay, so when it comes to leather, I'm going to show you how to lay down a foundation and then build texture on top of it. Too often, I think artists are trying to build on that detail right away. It's very important to give yourself a good foundation to work up from, and I'll show you how to do that. And I'm going to do it even with an extra challenge of doing it with just the basic hard edge brush. And the reason I want to do this is with materials such as leather, things that have a lot of texture and little nuances. I don't want people to assume that you have to use a texture brush, because you really don't. And I want it to be clear. Well, I thank you, Migo Z, for following, or Z for following. And I become so used to using the chalk brush that I think it just become kind of second nature to me. But I used to only use the hard edge brush, and I still could create texture and materials such as leather. So I'm going to show you how to do that so you don't feel like you have to rely on a texture brush to create texture. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's work on this one actually. So let's get some of these things out of here. Let me make sure that you guys can see it. Yes, it is available to anyone to work on today. So you don't have to be a member to download this. All the exercises on CG Cookie for the concept side are pretty much all of them are free. The only things that the pro members get are usually the downloadable step-by-step tutorials and things that go more in depth, but all the practice sheets are free. Okay. And for my colors, I'm basically working, you can see in my color picker here, I'm working with a very dark looking red. I'll make this actually bigger so it's easier for you guys to see. I'm probably only going to be working with these 4 colors for today. And if you want to use the same colors that I'm working with, I should have threw them in on the downloadable PSD. I'm sorry I didn't do that earlier. I didn't think of that. But if you want to just screen cap these 4 and then work with them, that is more than fine. Okay. So let me think. What was I gonna? Oh yeah, I was gonna get started with the flat texture. Okay, so first with leather, let's do a flat surface. So I'm just gonna just lay out the color pretty thick. And for each of these, I'm gonna make a new layer every time we do something substantial to the drawing. So that's our foundation layer. And from here, let's go ahead and I think I'm going to put a seam on the shape, or I'll do a seam on this one too. So let's just have a seam that goes kind of across it like here. And you know what? I'll even make a new layer to help represent that. So we're going to put a seam in because usually what gives leather that extra oomph or that extra level of detail is the seaming and the embossing that you put on leather. So let's go ahead and add that on everything that we're going to work on today, because I think it's good to get in a habit of adding that detail whenever you're working on leather. Let me see if there's any questions here. Autumn Goose says, I'm wondering if you've ever gotten any lettering training. How do I get started on that? Lettering training? No, I have not. My mom is a preschool teacher though, and she taught me how to write when I was very young, and she has this very fancy manuscript way of writing her name, so I think I picked that up after her. My handwriting's been called very girly, but I can definitely write in like more fancy cursive, or I always see those people online. I'm like jealous that I don't do this more often, but like the ones that use these kind of brushes. I can't even do it right now. I've never done this digitally, but essentially it's just taking your time and like always finding a imaginary line underneath of it. I want to do more type stuff so badly. I find it so interesting, and I follow so many type people on Instagram. I don't know why I find it so interesting, but I love that level of precision and control. So yeah, no, I've never had any lettering training, but I'm sure it would look a lot better if I did. All right, so I'm gonna lay it kind of sloppily on. I feel like with leather, you can get away with not having it look perfect and having this more worn texture to it. So I'm just gonna use my eyedropper tool to pick up some of that darker color and lay it on top. I'm putting my highlight kind of in the central area. And then let's grab, or actually I'm gonna put in the seam as well. So in our dark little canyon there, you can almost picture it like that. Let's go ahead and grab our lighter color. Start edging this out. So edging with material work is essentially when you come up to the area where it has a divot or a descent into the actual material. And usually with fabrics that are being worn, there's going to be stitching and things to hold the leather together. So like this might be held by like a big stitch of leather going throughout it. Almost think like a football or an American football, if you know what that looks like. And then same thing we were doing before. You can kind of let the lighter colors be a little bit more random, and then use my eyedropper tool to blend it out. Now, the other thing of working with leather is it's not a very reflective material. I think some people get confused thinking it is a reflective material because of some of the couches you see or leather that you see on fashion illustrations. But usually that leather has been tampered with, and it's usually, I forget what the actual word is called, but it has a layer of either oil or sheen or something on it that gives it more of a glossy appearance, where in reality, leather is just dead, dried flesh. Like if you really want to think about it like that, and flesh is not very reflective unless it becomes oily or wet. So leather reacts the same way. It's actually super dry, but unless you put a coating of oil or something on it, then it becomes more reflective. So when I'm laying on these lighter colors, it's not so much because I'm looking at the light source, but I'm trying to create the actual texture of leather first. And then the highlights will be built on top, if any. Well, thank you, Tomato Cactus. I love the names that you guys have on Twitch. I wish I created more of a funny one when I first started. And when I'm working with my brush strokes, I'm just kind of going back and forth. When you're not working with a texture brush, you're working with a very basic and a very defined edge brush, you kind of have to work your blending ability on overdrive. Unless you want a lot of your brush strokes to be seen, then that's a whole nother story. And I think as a style, it definitely works. But for me, I'm gonna go somewhere in between, where maybe some of the brushes strokes I'm gonna be okay with seeing them, but as a whole, I think I want to have it be more blended in. Now in the middle here, I'm gonna actually create. Let's grab that second brown color at the top. I'm going to create a line going down it, and this will represent your seam. And we're going to then grab our lighter brown and give it a bit more oomph, a bit more of that three-dimensional feel to it. I'm going to grab that really light brown. And like I said, with the highlights, I'm not trying to give it a very strong specular highlight. Instead, I'm trying to give the material more of a texture and more of a presence. So this lighter brown is doing just that. It's not acting as a reflective surface so much. And you know what? I think just to show you what it would look like with highlights, I'll add some of those on top. But I think it's good to see what it looks like with without highlights as well. Because the leather that I normally like working with is the one that doesn't have highlight. It's more of a dried, tanned looking leather. And the other thing that you should do is use reference. With any material that you're working with, you should always be using reference. And in this case, what leather does sometimes, it has these creases in it. And with those creases, this side will have a lighter look to it, and then on this side it'll be darker, and then it'll create this contrast line. And I'll show you what that will look like. Like right here, I'll make a bit of a contrast line. And that crease gives just that extra level of worn and wear and tear. Let me see if there's any questions here. Well, I thank you, Yamaze, for following, or Yamaze? Yamaze. One of those. Diamond G98 says, Pokemon Sun or Moon? This is the first Pokemon game I will not be buying. And I've played every single one since the first generation, when I was a wee little lad back in the day. There's just something about the new ones that I'm not, maybe I'm just old, but they added so many new features and abilities that I don't know, I just couldn't get behind it as much as I wanted to. I hear it's great though. The reviews for it have been pretty spectacular. But the one game I am looking forward to play comes out next week, and that's Final Fantasy 15. I have a few friends coming over next weekend, and we're literally binging it the entire weekend because we want to get it done. I don't really play video games much anymore, and when I do, I try to finish it so that I have this weird guilt trip that I put on myself whenever I play video games now, and I'm allowing myself a weekend to finish this game. So that should be an interesting weekend. But yeah, I still think, I used to think Rowlet was my favorite starter though, and then it became Litten, and I'm not a big cat fan. I'm definitely a dog person, but somehow Litten won my heart over until you saw the final evolutions, and I was like, not my favorite, I guess. And surprisingly, Papilo, or however you want to pronounce it. Well, thank you, Oleg Mozji, for following. Papilio won me over, and I actually like that final evolution the best out of the three. Okay. Oh, and actually, speaking of Pokemon, if anyone still plays Pokemon Go, I heard they just released Ditto yesterday. So if you are looking to catch a Ditto, or if that's one of your favorite Pokemon and you were upset that they didn't release him at launch, you can do that now. All right, so now from here, you can kind of see how we built up this texture, and it has this unevenness to it, and that's what I wanted to create. I wanted to create that sense of irregularity and imperfection. Because with leather, the dirtier and the more wear and tear you can get, usually it creates a better end result. And from here, I'm just going to do a quick blend in. Trying to create, I do like some of that scratchy brush strokey surface appearance on this leather, but I think as a whole, I need to smooth it out a bit more. Well, I thank you, Rodrigo Esser, for following. And then I'll show you usually what you should do after you get to this point, because this is something that I used to do when I was back in school. I would rely on a photograph of a chunk of leather that I took, and I would overlay it on everything I did. Even with if you looked at the Twitch marketing banner I did today, that definitely had some of that material overlay on it. And yeah, it works. It definitely creates texture fast. But I think the best way to really learn and understand a material is to work it up from just the basics, because then you really have to work to add in those details and that texture. And once you understand how to do it, I think it becomes easier then to allow things like photo integration. I know a lot of photo bashing happens in the concept art world, and there's a lot of bad photo bashing in the concept art world. So I think if you understand the material, then when you photo bash, you can see the imperfections or what looks wrong. And oftentimes, if you go right into art and you start photo bashing right away because that's what you see online or something, it may look really off because it doesn't look proper. It looks very sloppy, and you don't want your work to ever come across as sloppy. All right, something like that. And then if we, I'm just gonna slice off these edges here. Something like that. Let me see what that looks like on the main screen. Oh, and then you know what I might do actually? I'm gonna give this some dimension here. It's almost like we took a slice of leather, like a little square snippet. If you can kind of see that, let me go ahead and, or actually the side of leather is typically lighter. I don't know why I made that darker actually. Something like that. And it actually gets even lighter than this. So what I may do, I'm going to color pick that, go lighter on my color scale here, and give it some more detailing. And since this layer is underneath of that top layer, you won't see the additions of this scratchy lighter color that I'm adding on the top. That's why digital art kind of has that convenience that traditional art unfortunately does not. Now, when working on something like this, you can see how areas here are definitely a problem. Let me zoom in so it's easier to see here. But essentially, I need to make sure that this dips down and makes sense with what we already created on top. And then even having some areas where this underneath, or that inside, kind of breaks through. I think just to give you a better example of how much easier it is to do leather with a texture brush or something, let me go ahead and do pretty much the same exact thing with the chalk brush. I still think it's very important to learn how to do something like this with the basic brush, but it's good then to see, oh, I can see how a texture brush can make that process a lot simpler. So to go, I'm going to move this up. So now if I was working with my chalk brush, putting in some of this texture just becomes a lot easier. Let me do kind of the same thing. But since this brush already comes with a bit of texture on top of it, well, thank you, Zazzy McCazzles, for following. But since it already has some of that texture built in, it becomes so much easier when laying it on to create the illusion of leather. Miss Chibi Artist says, does Wacom do Black Friday deals? I'm pretty sure they do. I think last year I was looking into buying my Cintiq around Black Friday, but it was either the Cintiq I was not interested in getting or something with... I actually, no, I think that was it. I think they were doing a Black Friday sale on the Cintiq I didn't want. So yeah, I'm pretty sure they do Black Friday sales. I could be wrong though. I don't know if they're gonna do one this year, but I would assume they would. I don't know why they wouldn't. This is such a big weekend for digital sales for any company, so I feel like Wacom should be on board. Oh yeah, and for all of you tea drinkers out there, I forgot to mention, today I am sponsored by, what is this, caramel apple tea, and I'm actually drinking out of the bear mug. Oh, it's perfect for a fall day. So you can see how that extra scruff on the edge of the brush really helps add in and imply kind of a level of detail that with the circle brush, it's just harder to get to. It's not impossible, it's definitely doable, but it's a lot easier to do something like this with a texture brush. And I think that's why I've adopted it so frequently in the past few years, and it became my go-to brush because of that ability. And I still love the hard edge brush and even the soft edge brush at times, but for on the go when you really need to get something done fast, I definitely would recommend a texture brush over one of the basic ones. Yeah, something like that. All right, obviously it's looking pretty rough, and let me do this side really quick. But if you're doing something that needs to be done quickly, that's where I would definitely recommend texture brush, because I think oftentimes people assume that all concept artists are illustrators, so they have like a really long time to work on a single painting. But when you're working in the industry, they need something done fast, and they need it as soon as possible. So you don't have a lot of time. You're not allowed a lot of time to work on your pieces. Instead, you want to get it to the art director as quickly as possible. And then don't forget to use your eraser tool on the edge or whatever tool you're working with to cut in those indentations. Because what gives leather that extra bit of detail are the seams. And if you don't make the seams look functional, or if you don't pop them out at all, that extra level of detail that's so easy to achieve, it's lost. Something like that. And when you zoom out, you can kind of see the similarities between the two. All right. Now, working on that kind of leather, it's kind of boring, but it's a good little warm-up. The next thing we're going to do is a cylinder. So let me zoom in a little bit. All right, so let me just rough out a cylinder shape. And basically what we're going to do is the same kind of seaming, but we're going to have it going across the top and then down the edge here. Something like that. So we're going to put seaming lines on either side and really build it up. Okay, so I'm going to make a new layer underneath. Grab our darkest brown that we're working with today. And for my initial outline, I'm actually going to make it lighter because this initial color is so dark that it's hard to see the outline that I've created. Oop. So I'm going to make this a touch bigger. I'm not caring about going outside the lines because that is not what we're worried about. And you know what? I think I am going to use the chalk brush for this one, just because I want to get to our helmet here. And I think to get there faster, we'll just use the texture brush. Well, I thank you, little sugar cake, for following. All right, so I'm making a new layer. Grab our second brown, and we're going to have a light source that's overhead, pretty standard, and it's going to land here first, and then it's going to kind of build its way around the cylinder. And I'm allowing my brush strokes to be more scratchy. I'm allowing them to be not so defined and controlled. Apparently my tea's done again. You can see how it definitely leaves a bit of texture and that presence behind. Then I'm going to grab my third brown, create another new layer. And for any of those pro members out there, I'm going to put this PSD to download if you want to see it. In the exercise, which you can check out below, I have a link to exercise 49, I believe is the leather one. And it'll have this PSD so you can check out what we did with all the layers here. And when I'm building it up, I'm not necessarily trying to create a perfect gradient from light to dark, because you want some of that irregular surface texture to it. So that's why you see me bring in some of the lighter areas on the right side, and then I'll bring some of those darker colors into the left side. We don't want to have this perfect smooth balance from one brown to the next, because it just wouldn't look as real. And then I'm going to make the top a slightly darker value, just so it reads better as a light source coming more from the front of it, and then that top surface wouldn't be at the angle to reflect the light as properly. Now, remember, with leather, it's not a super reflective property, so we're not going to treat it like one, but I will add in just a touch of highlight here and there and show you what that would look like. Oh, looks like someone said the chat was broken for a while. Probably just try refreshing. I know that happens sometimes with Twitch. Unless if it's on my end, then we have a bigger problem. But let me know if you guys can see the comments and comment in it. Now the seam is definitely a detail that I'm going to put more attention into. So I don't want to start detailing that until I feel comfortable with the rest of our cylinder here. And too often, I think artists are scared to go outside of lines. And I'm going to show you that it definitely needs, or you definitely don't need to care, because it's just going to get erased anyways. And having that restriction on your mind might actually create a really awkward edge when you remove that outline. So don't worry about if you're going outside of the lines or not. All right, now with this lighter brown, getting ready for that seam there. Now, while we're gonna start building it up, and I'm gonna start with the top lip of this leather canister, or whatever this is that we're making out of leather. I'm gonna zoom in to give you a better idea of what we're doing. So we're going to have a seam going right down the center here, and I'm going to outline either side of it with this lighter brown. And we're going to carry that pretty much all the way down for the most part. I don't want it to read too heavy, so I try to have it more sporadic going down. I'm going to change my eraser tool to the chalk brush as well here. And I'm just going to imply a very light indication on the top. So now let's zoom out, erase that outer edge. Because we're getting to the point where I'm just going to go ahead and erase. Or not erase, I'll just hide the line art layer. Because now we can have some fun with the detailing process. You can see when we hide that line art layer, we still have a pretty good indication of where all of our seams and that leather is. So this is with it on and off. You can see how there's not much of a difference, besides the fact that now we can work with a very clean line art edge. So I'm going to grab the lightest brown, edge that off, and I'm going to actually go pretty dark, or at least darker in between these seams here. And you want to make sure that you carry it throughout. So whatever level of detail you're trying to achieve, whether it's super stylized and painterly or more graphically rendered, or if you're doing more of a realistic style or even a cartoony, you want to make sure that it feels consistent throughout. I'm going to go somewhere in between like a painterly and a realistic final result. So I don't want to skimp on the details, and I really want to make sure that they shine pretty well. Labyrinth says, just wanted to say seeing the color panel is really helpful. I don't remember you having up before, so thank you. Yeah, definitely. What are you guys talking about on the stream? I just saw, I don't like sleeping on my back. Chicks don't dig the horn. I don't know what you guys are doing on the chat here. I think, actually, I feel like our emoji is appropriate for that time. That's the look I give right now. So now, once I get to a point of edging out these seams enough, I'll add in just a small highlight to show you what that looks like. Because right now we're working with very matte colors, and it's definitely not being defined by the any highlight given to create that value. It's definitely creating its own value through almost like a very subtle value difference, but mainly through hue difference here. Okay, so let's go ahead and add in our highlight. So I'm going to select our lightest brown. And if you look at my color picker, I guess this is a good thing for you to see too. So you can see how the darkest color that we're working with, not only is it moving in value and saturation, but you can see how in our rainbow slider bar, it starts off a bit more red, and then as we get lighter, it becomes slightly more orange. And that's because I try to bend my colors. It's called hue shifting. And anything towards a lighter color where the light source is coming from, you bend it towards more of a yellow, more of a warm color. And then any areas where you're bending it to your shadows, you want to keep it more cool with either purples and blues. So in this case, we're going from more of a red, and then it's adjusting more to a yellow as we go up. And you can see how the saturation is actually higher in the shadow area than it is in the light area too. That's because shadow colors are actually more saturated than areas in light. Because light usually will bleach the color, it'll tone it down, or it will tint it just a touch, and it creates a less saturated version of the color. So there's a few things going on, and it's good to note that I usually like to keep a bell curve with all of the colors that I use. So the darkest will usually be on the bottom right side, and then as I choose lighter colors, it'll bend toward that white. It'll go higher in value and then a little less saturated, and it'll keep doing that over and over. So if we keep that trend going, where do you think it should be? If we're working with this color here and it started here, from the color picker, it would be a little lighter on the value, a bit less saturated, and then our hue would be shifted more toward yellow. So our fifth color on our giant color spectrum here would be this. And you can see how you definitely have some hue shifting from the first one to the last one. And now with the highlights, I'm going to be almost more sporadic with them, with placing on the edge of the seam. I'm really just trying to create more of a defined edge and where that light source is coming from. And you can see how I'm not really trying to add any on top because that would imply that the light is higher, or it can get more of that reflection on the top. But instead I want it to be coming more from the side, and in this case you definitely want to showcase that through placing your highlights on the edge of the curve, not so much on the top plane of the cylinder. Then if I really wanted to push it further, which I guess I'll show you for this little demo, we could really push some of our highlights. I'm gonna make my brush really small. And this will give you more of that shiny leather look, the oiled or the waxed leather. So like that. You can see how it definitely builds up more of a form to it, but if you add too much highlight, then it won't start looking like leather anymore. It will just become a different material altogether. So you want to be careful with that. Alright, so now before we move on to the Aviator hat, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll do a quick little design and emboss something here. But I want to show you then from here, this is when you could add in a texture brush, and you'll see how it'll like give it quite a bit more design almost immediately. You know what? I'm going to work with a multiply layer to better showcase it. So you see how a lot of those nuances, and you know what? Let me do a soft light too, because this will really pop up. So you can see how brushes definitely give more of the illusion of texture and material. I try to create a good foundation first so that I don't feel like I'm relying on texture brushes too much, but you can definitely see the difference between the two. And then even from here, like let's say I wanted to give it some backlighting. I think for the backlight, I'm going to choose more of like a gray. Actually, I don't like it on the top at all. But usually having kind of a neutral offset color as like your bounce light or whatever it may be will add a cool little touch to it. Then obviously when you're done, you want to either erase all the excess, or a lot of the times what I do now is I just paint over the area that I don't want to be seen. So in this case, I'll do just that. This is also why I recommend working on more of a neutral layer, because when I was working on a white layer, it was kind of this harsh contrast, but now that I have more of a neutral background to work on, all the colors now in the leather material that we worked on, it really pops. And then if I was just going on autopilot, I would just let my mind take over, and I would just be like, okay, mind, take me to any area that you feel like the detail isn't working right now, and just start working it. So maybe I'll do this for like 5 minutes, give our cylinder a bit more life, and then I'll move on to our Aviator hat for kind of the big project for the day. I'm going to make these seams actually really dark, because right now they just feel like slightly pressed in. Let's give it more of like a really deep pinch of the material. And maybe like we'll do one little stream or thing keeping them together. There probably actually, I don't know why there's a shadow on top. There would only really be much of a cast shadow underneath. What we can do with these little hole pockets now is we can edge those out as well. And these won't be as deep as the ones on the side, but we'll definitely give it just a touch of embossing there. This just gives the illusion that the leather is being pushed in and out, and creates more of an illusion of detail as well. So anytime you can add one of these, you definitely want to add detail. Unless if you're like adding detail everywhere to the point where it's literally an eyesore to look at, then yeah, you might want to pull back then. But for the most part, you should be okay. Now, usually if you do something like this, what you would do at this point, if you wanted like a bunch of these seams, you would just copy and paste. Because the good thing about something like this is it's not too focused on having an individual look to each of them. You can get away with copy and pasting and then adding like just little nuances that make them different afterwards. Let me darken the holes on each of them. So something like that. And then if you wanted to make sure that no one could tell that you're just copy and pasting. So make a new layer above all of it, and then just slightly shade it different on each. And actually, maybe like I'll put some of that highlight differently on each thread. Something like that. Blue1117 says, is this a new chalk brush? No, this is actually the same chalk brush that is available on CG Cookie in the basic brush pack. It is the fourth one in the basic brushes here. You can see it. It's basically my go-to brush. I use it for practically everything nowadays. I'm kind of in the process of really wanting to do a new brush. I feel like the chalk brush carries its own problems, especially when you make it bigger. You can see how it has those like cutout masked circles, and I'm not sure I really like that effect that much. So I might be creating a new brush to work with in the next month or two, and if I do, I'll definitely share it with you guys. But as of right now, the chalk brush still holds for what I need in a brush. So I usually tell myself to never overlay or multiply as a scapegoat, but let's go ahead and add an overlay to our lighter areas, and I can show you how that will really make your leather pop in the area where you want the light source to be hitting it. And usually I go pretty heavy on the overlay, and then I'll just turn the layer's opacity down, because oftentimes it's way too heavy for my liking. So you can see there. Well, I thank you, Velkostrative, for following. I am so sorry for mispronouncing all of your guys' usernames. I really don't mean to intentionally. Or you might even want to go back to a texture brush, do a multiply, and then lay that over. I'm going to do an inverse selection here so that we only paint inside of our material. Oops. So you can see the effect that then we can create with it. So I have my own problems with using texture brushes as a reliant to create a material, but I definitely understand the purpose of creating things quickly and effectively and efficiently. So I think texture brushes actually do help out a lot when it comes to creating a material such as leather. Labyrinth says, would you do a stream on how to make brushes? Yeah, you know what? I actually might do that next week. Let me think about this for a second. Yeah. Actually, it sounds like a really good idea. If there's any brushes that you guys want to see created that you'd want to use for your own work, let me know. And next week, I'll just create a bunch of them, and then you guys can download them. I'll probably make it to pro members, though, and I definitely think I need to include some of the ones that I've been wanting to create for a while, so maybe that would make a good stream. iRobos says, mine looks like copper more than leather. You might be going too hard on the highlights, because copper is a metal, so it will have a reflective surface. Well, I thank you, J. Robbie, for following. So if yours is starting to look more like copper, try to tone down the orange and tints that you have in that contrast. And I didn't think that we would be doing the paint along so much with the first two. I definitely think with the Aviator hat, I'll take you step by step on if you're drawing alongside me or if you're painting alongside me, how to go ahead and create that. You can see all the crazy amount of layers that I like to create whenever I'm painting. So I'll just throw that in a group there. name it cylinder. So that's kind of like a basic way of going about leather. But let's go ahead and now apply it to our Aviator cap. I'm going to grab those two colors though. Actually, yeah, maybe it'll be cool for you guys to see the cycle of its creation. So from start, there we go. So it's definitely one way about going and doing leather. Put these back up here. Now let's go ahead and work on our Aviator hat. This definitely brings a bigger challenge, but a fun challenge. I really like I said earlier, I love working with leather. And I'm hoping that it can help you guys if you're doing something with leather on your characters to hopefully understand it a bit better. Okay, so for those of you that are wanting to follow along with me, please download below and then we will get started very soon. So let me see if there's another question here. Nebula Fox says you should make an animation, like a GIF of what I just did, or what kind of animation are you talking about? Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go back to my chalk brush. Start off with that really, really dark color and make a layer underneath of our Aviator cap line art layer. And you can see I made the line art layer specifically a gray so that it turns out easier for us to see than if I used black. Now, the first thing I want you guys to know is we have a lot of overlapping materials and textures. There's a lot of layers even to something as simple as this Aviator hat. We've got this strap holding an earpiece which connects this way and then hangs down. And I'm not even going to worry about this part right now. We're going to first worry about the hat underneath, which is more or less this area. And then we'll work on things that are above the cap afterwards. So I'm going to make another new layer. And I'm going to lay it on. I'm totally ignoring the accessories and the layers on top. And I want you guys to start off with a rather big brush. Focus more of your attention in the center and then kind of bleed out onto the edges. Don't make it a solid color though. If you find yourself getting a bit too solid in this secondary color, just take your eraser tool and go over it a touch. And then just do a quick pass with a slightly smaller brush. Like I said, ignore the accessories on top. And don't even worry about the seaming right now. We can definitely look at it and acknowledge it when we're laying these down, but I wouldn't focus too much on it at the moment. We're gonna make another new layer, grab our third brown. I'm gonna work with a medium-sized brush. I'm not quite getting into detailing, but when I'm at this part, I definitely wanna have more of a rough application of this brush. So having more strokes that aren't completely smooth and gradient-like. Let the texture be worn. Let it be a bit irregular. Oops. Let me put the comments where I can see them here. There we go. And for the colors of leather, I'm definitely working with a very saturated leather source. If you want to work with something that's more like Mad Maxy, you want to work with a bit more desaturated tones and tints. Because right now, these colors are very, very rich. It's a very rich looking leather, which is okay because I think that's the effect that I'm trying to create here. Don't forget the lip on the edge of all this leather stuff. Try to create like a lot of wrinkles. You don't even have to do it intentionally. Sometimes just by doing more rough strokes, it just kind of creates itself. All right, and then you'll see the difference that that layer makes here. And we're slowly building up, and you should be able to start to see it come together. So now grab your next lightest brown, make your brush smaller. This is where we're going to start working on some of the detailing here. We're not going to go too much into the cracks and crevices, but we're definitely going to edge them out with this lighter brown. If I'm going too fast, let me know, guys. I'm trying to fit it in so that for our time period. But if there's any point where you're like, could you go over that again? I definitely will. The reason we do these live streams are to help teach something. And if I'm not teaching, then I'm not doing my job. So I want to make sure I am helping you guys to the best of my ability. So even like if you see any line with the line art, you want to edge this lighter color right up against it. Don't go under it, go right next to it. And you'll see when we hide the line art layer what that creates. The question from Labyrinth is, where's the light source at this for? This is more of the standard overhead lighting. If you're ever doing something like this, and it's another term that I normally don't like to use when I'm doing my digital painting is pillow shaded, but essentially where you have your light source kind of in the center of whatever object you're creating, and then it pillows out to the edge. Normally this would be like an overhead light or a light that is in front and overhead. And I like this because it really shows off the material we're working with. And this isn't so much a lighting demonstration. And I think if we add light sources into this, it creates more of a complex drawing, but I want it to be really focused on leather. Maybe at the very end, I'll show you what a cast shadow on this may look like as an example of a more complex lighting scenario, but we're keeping it very simple here. Oh, vanilla. Oh, that sounds really good right now for a tea. Fate says slow down. All right, maybe if you guys are catching up here, I'll just go a quick review of what we just did. So let me zoom in. So this is our dark base color here. Started to throw down kind of a sloppy second one to really start building it up and have that underlying color be seen through. It's with our third color, that's when we start adding in more implications of form. And you can see how I'm a little more careful with my positioning of it. And with the fourth one, now we're really starting to have more precision with the way that we're laying out each of these, the brush strokes. And in some areas of leather, I'm just going to do like a dabble. I'm not even going to do like a full-on render stroke. I'm going to do more of like these quick, short little dashes. And I'm not going to go down the entire seam because the way that leather works is it'll be facing your light source at different directions depending on where the seam is. So even like this front one, I'm not just going to have a really light one going all the way down it. I'm going to have it peak in certain areas where I think that the fabric would be at a fold, And wherever that hump of the fold is closest to the light source, that's where it'll be lighter. If that makes sense, sorry. Some things make sense in my head, but then as I'm saying it, I'm like, does this sound complex or very strange? So I get the tip here. I'll probably make the tip here lighter than the area here, just to imply that it's pushing toward the light source, and then it backs away, and then up here it has that hump again. Something like that. I'm probably not going to punch this lighter color too much underneath where it's wrinkling near the neck area, just because I want more of the focus to be up here. And especially if you're working on character art, you want more of the attention in the general face area, even with, this is more of like a side profile, but you want it to be concentrated up here. So having a lot of detail and attention back here is kind of taking the viewer's eye away. You can have enough detail where the eye can start rotating around, but you want to keep a lot of the attention up near the facial area. And these straps and stuff are probably pushing against the leather, creating its own kind of pressure. And when you do that, you're going to create little bumps of the fabric because you're pushing on it. It's kind of like fabric. When you push on it, see how I'm like creating my own little indentations and shadows that aren't there when I'm not pushing. Same kind of deal with this head piece here. Something like that. Okay, so now let's see what that looks like before and after. You can see how, okay, we're really starting to build up some of that textural detail on the surface. I'll make one more new layer, and then I'll add in our highlights. But like I said, I like to keep them very dry, very subtle and light. I don't like to overdo highlights on leather. And that's more of a personal choice. Like if you really like shiny leather, then I mean, go for it. Really add in those highlights. Just make sure you're concentrating them enough where it still makes sense for the material. You don't want to add highlights that imply it's a different material, because then you lose that leather feel to it whenever a viewer looks at it, and you don't want to lose that. If you lose that, then the whole material gets lost, and that's the worst case scenario. All right, so our moment of truth is hopefully we built it up enough where we can hide the line art layer and it will still read well. So let's go ahead, hide it, and you can see, okay, I can still get an idea of where all the forms that we created and all the stitching on where it is. So from here, now let's go back. I'm going to turn the line art layer back on. Or should I detail this out further? No, I think now I feel comfortable going back and doing the straps and the details on top. So let's do the same process that we just did. We're going to start with our base, but we already have that down. Now let's start building it up with our secondary color. And now it should become a little easier to see where I should lay it on because we have some color aids underneath helping us with the first pass we did. You guys are funny. It's one of those moments where I think even with our emoticons, I think the golden fridge will be like a yes or it looks good. And then the other eye will be more of like a ugh, or it needs to be redone or no. So like that was either a fridge or an eye moment. And I think hopefully for all of you, when you hide that line art layer, you get a fridge moment. Now, where was I with? Oh yeah, I was painting on the headpiece here. Strap is definitely going to be a lot of fun to do. Let's go on to our next layer here, which is our third brown color. Remember, this is where you can start kind of implying where the detail or where the seams are, giving more of an impression as to the stitching and the way that it's constructed below. iRopes says, one day I'll have a fridge moment. Actually, I've had a lot of people ask me, they want to send me magnets of their work to put on my fridge. I'm actually going to make a little magnet fridge out of it's not going to be a real fridge, but it's going to be a front. You'll definitely see what it looks like. I'm going to make it sometime in December. But I think it would be funny to like hang it behind me and I'll have it there. So if any of you guys want to send me a magnet of your work and you want it on the fridge, then you can go ahead and see it. And I'll make a legit golden looking fridge just to match the emoticon that we have here. And I want to do more with the emoticons. I know that I have to wait until we get 25 subscribers to do the next set. But I think for next week, I'm going to replace the I with the T. And I think we'll do some rotating in and out until we are able to have more permanently. Just because I think it would be fun if we can use more. I do think the fridge will be a staple. I feel like that's a funny little story behind it. I like the meaning behind it. So I definitely think that one will be a keeper. Okay, then on our next layer, our next color. Angie Valda says, so I sort of forgot you did streams on Wednesdays, and since it is my first day on Thanksgiving break, I thought it was a Saturday. I'm pretty sure today is Wednesday, and I've only done Wednesday streams for CG Cookie for as long as I can remember. And then only recently did I start doing those more casual ones where they're on the weekend and randomly throughout the week. And you'll definitely see more of those pop up. And like I said, I'm pretty sure Saturday I'll do a casual stream for a little while, showing me editing some of my traditional stuff, getting it ready for my Kickstarter book in January. Angie Valda says, you should make your fridge Christmas themed. Oh, that would be cute. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Oh, actually, is there any emoticons with something holiday related that you guys would want to see? Because now that we have this power to kind of put them in and out depending on how we feel, I'll definitely put in some holiday themed ones if you want to see them. Let's see what that looks like. And then lastly, give it some highlight, and then we'll get into our detailing because we have about 40 minutes left of the stream, and we'll see how fast can Tim work to add in some nice rendering details. Hopefully today I can work pretty fast. Thank you, T.O. Adam, for following. Gypsy Hummingbird says, I see a decoy fridge so you continue to not put art on the real fridge. I promise that wasn't the intention, but that's kind of funny. Snowman. Do you kind of follow the form with the strokes as Toonfish 7? Yes. I'm definitely looking at my line art and seeing like the buildup of where the form would be, and then I'm placing my marks based on that. So this is why having line art is important. Like I definitely do a lot of pieces where I don't start with line art anymore, but I will say the pieces that I do start with line art, I definitely work with it because you have this advantage. You have this extra piece of information and foundation to work with. So why not work with it and use it to the best of your ability? Let's see here. Nebula Fox says a snowman as you're doing snow holiday tea. Oh, you know what? I'll do a holiday tea one starting because next week it'll be December. Wait, will it be? Hold on. I'm so lost with time. No, it'll still be November 30th. Okay, so the day after will be December. So maybe next week I'll do normal tea, and then the week after I'll do holiday themed tea. Oh, maybe that'll be an emoticon that's constantly changing with every month or something. I'll change the tea. Actually, I kind of like that idea. Let's do that. Thank you, Shinviro, for following. Yeah, so like during December, maybe I'll like go out and buy peppermint tea or holiday themed tea, and I'll drink that every stream for that month, and then every month it'll change. And then we can drink the same tea together if you want to also get peppermint tea. I'll probably get peppermint. Let me think about that. Maybe there's like a cool holiday tea out there that I don't even know about that I could find. I mean, I used to really like eggnog, but now that I don't really drink milk, it's not really in my listings of what I want to drink. Okay, now we're at the point where I'm going to go ahead and hide our line art layer. There will definitely be some sloppiness to this, and I know this going into it. So when I hide the line art layer, I'm not going to be like, like what happened? That it was looking so good. So this is it without the line art layer. So you can see how some of the details are lost. Some of them are still there. And then any area where there was like a metal bracket or a button or something, it's definitely kind of left blank, which is kind of what I was expecting. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to put all those layers in its own folder. I'm going to merge it down just because it's going to be easier for me to work on a singular layer and treat it more like a painting. So that's what I'm going to do here. So let's go ahead and erase all this excess that we don't need anymore. Because unlike our cylinder, I actually want this to be separate of the background layer so that for those of you that want to download this after the stream, and it'll probably go out tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. It'll probably go out tomorrow though. So like maybe sometime during the weekend, if you have an opportunity to want to check this PSD and see all the layers, it'll be up probably Friday. I would assume Friday, but if not, Saturday for sure. So I'm using my line art layer as another guide here to erase all this excess color that we don't need anymore. Now that we're really trying to like get it to a refined state, this is where I do recommend erasing the excess. Make sure to get down here along the edge. And then for areas like these pockets, I might even just grab my selection tool. Grab it and then just delete. Oops. Let's try that again. There we go. Now, some people might even just turn their line art layer to like a multiply, so you get more of that dark edge. And normally I like this kind of effect, maybe actually I do like the way it gave us the edge on some of that. You know what? I kind of do like that, actually. Let's work with it. I think I might just turn the opacity down a bit, but I actually like the way it's looking right now. I think the one thing I'll do, though, is if we're going to keep this fake mannequin head, I'll at least give it a proper edge here. There, something like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and work with this, because I think this actually gives us a really good foundation to continue working upon. I'm going to start, just because I don't know how fast time's going to go, so I'm going to start really building it up in this area. I'll start adding even some metal embellishments just to show you what that would look like and kind of go from there. So I'm going to work above the line art layer so that if we work over it, it's okay. And I'm going to detail kind of like how we were doing with the cylinder. I'm just looking for areas that I think need some more pop or more distinctive curves. I'll go in and I'll just add it. So if you're doing this, maybe see if you like changing that layer to multiply it. And if not, I mean, you can definitely do this without it. It's definitely not like it's recommended entirely. Like it's not, or necessary, I should say. It's not necessary to continue painting. It just definitely created a cool look that I wanted to continue with here. And I think just so that I always forget this, I should be working on a more neutral background. Just because it really does become easier to see the color properties properly. Because stark white sometimes presents its own problems. There we go. And remember, let some of those like pockets of it almost like dirty rustic or something, let it poke through. Now here's a case where we have this metal bracket type situation. So let's go ahead and add in, oops, I'll make a new layer. Let's do a quick metal addition to show you what this might look like. Working with very neutral grays is my foundation, and I'll work with very contrasted light values to add more of an impression of a highlight. Do something on the other side a bit. But I still want it to look rustic and not like a perfectly smooth, clean metal shine. And that's why I am kind of working it up the way that I am. There's definitely going to be a curvature of a gradient because the leather is wrapping around this metal coil thing. So I want it to read that way properly. Like that. And see all these seams here? You want to edge up this lighter color right up against it. Like that. Faithful says, I turned mine to multiply because the other color just wasn't doing it for me, and it's at 25%. Yeah, like if you think the opacity needs to be lower, work with that. A lot of the times I don't think, or actually all the time, I don't think there's a right way to go about doing your art. I think there's definitely techniques that have worked for you in the past, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to absolutely 100% work for you in the future. So something that might work really well for me might not work perfectly for you, but it may help, or maybe will help you see your art in a different way, or at least the process differently. Some of these seams are actually a little too thick for me. Like I think the stitching could be not so large in between. And admittedly, this is usually when I would like zoom in very close and do like hyper detailing, but I'm gonna try to refrain from doing that today. So then on here, I really want it to read that it's going around this metal bracket. So you can see I have to edit the original seam that I had to really give the impression of it wrapping around. And even with those metal colors that I used, let me bring one down here into like this little metal insert where there's a hole in the middle. And usually the way that I do metal stuff like this is have it very heavy on the top and have like one on the bottom. Not quite as long or as heavy, but same deal. You don't want it to just be like a giant shine all the way around. And you know what? Actually, for something like this is when you start to learn to become a little more efficient with your art. You can copy and paste a lot of these and then do like small editing to each of them so that it doesn't look so copy and pasted. That'll merge. You know what? Let me add one more. I feel like oops. Oh, that's why. I was like, why are things moving? My hand was on the wrong part of the keyboard. Yeah, I like that. Sometimes I have to like look back at it, take a step back from it and be like, do I like that addition? And if so, then I keep it. But if there was a hole in here, it would definitely look a little different. Probably look something more like that. Yeah, there we go. All right, I'm going to merge a lot of these layers together because we don't need all of them on separate layers. There we go. All right, so then we're just going to continue through. So now you can see on like this area, I'll zoom in for it. I'm going to bump it up. Here, I'm not going to have a really dark, heavy seam on the other side, but I'm just going to imply that it's being pushed and pressed right up against this actual seam. That's what's giving it more of this bump impression. And you can definitely probably tell this is where I get lost in doing leather working. Not in a bad way, but I really just enjoy rendering leather. So I could get in here, like add some dirt stains, add some leather folds and curves, and just have fun with it. Something like that. Now let's go ahead and maybe add like a curve to our leather here. Give it more of like a pinch effect. Because the leather won't always be perfect, even when seamed by a machine. Sometimes it'll bunch up depending on how much wear and tear it has. So let's just add a little bump there. And you want to think about this when you're doing materials like leather. You want to give it more of a realistic look. And to do that, you want to add in these little imperfection details and nuances. So after I go through and do like a pass on everything, that's when we'll go in and lay on our texture brush then over it. Because like I said, I like to create a really nice foundation first and then go back and add in the texture to really give it that extra detail that it needs. Because right now it still feels very brushstrokey, it feels digital, and a lot of that is because of the way that we're rendering it. So you can see I definitely want to give more focus to that seam. I think I'm going to make the side of the strap actually darker here. And with the holes that are cut into the leather, I actually want to see through them. So you would see some of that background color behind it. And this is where you can also play with, once again, punching up the edges around it. Imply more of that cut in and that pressure. iRobes says you should stream more often. Yeah, you're not the first person to tell me that. Actually, the Twitch representative that I had to talk to get the partnership, she even mentioned how normally they don't give partnerships away to people that don't stream like all the time. And I think just because of our background with streaming for 4+ years and it being absolutely consistent, they definitely gave us, I think, a pass. And I think that's what made me want to start doing more casual streams, because the more I talked to her, the more it did seem logical to do more casual streams. And I think that's something that I need to get comfortable doing more often. And I'll usually tell you guys when I'm doing it. So that's why I was saying how on Saturday I'm planning to do it. But then come next year, I am really making a push on doing my illustrated novel. I think with Halloween, it kind of I had to prove to myself that I could do daily drawings. And with swordplay, I think there was a lot of pressure I put on myself of thinking I couldn't do the amount of work that I wanted to do. But now I'm realizing that was just a mindset. That was a very negative way of looking at it, and I can do it. I think all of you should realize you can do whatever you set your mind to. You're usually the person holding yourself back from actually doing it, though. And a lot of it might even come down from the people that you surround yourself with. If you have any negative influences, get them out of your life. I definitely had to sweep through and filter through some of the friends I had this year and kind of cut some of them out. It's because they're not bad people necessarily, but they just have this very negative attitude about projects or doing new things, or they think too small. What they want to do and what you want to do might not coexist well together, and that might cause conflict between you. And you might just recognize that and be like, you know what, it's probably best if we just went our separate ways. And that happens a lot. I think the older I get, the more I'm able to recognize that you need to have that in your life. You need to let go of people that aren't going to help you move forward with the things that make you happy. And unfortunately, a lot of that times it's your closest friends and sometimes even your closest family. So just be aware of that situation. And if you're in it currently, really try to ask yourself, is this hurting me in the long run? Like, am I keeping this person around because of our history? Or do I actually feel like they're contributing to helping me on a path that I want to be on? Because I kid you not, the more that I do art and the more that I'm on this art journey, I realize a lot of it is a mental game, and you have to stay strong. You have to really believe in what you're doing. Because if you believe in yourself and what you want to achieve, I mean, it'll get done. The thing that you probably lack is experience. But if you really have this drive and this passion to do it, I promise you, you will get a job in this industry. It's usually the people that aren't passionate enough that fall short. And I don't want any of you to be that. I want each of you to kind of gain that mindset of, I can do this, I will do this, and I've done it. And keep that going, that mantra going throughout your entire art career. All right, let's see here. I see a skull on the hat. A skull. Where do you see the skull? Near the metal clip. Oh, is it here? Is that the skull you see? That's pretty fun. I'm just gonna leave it then. I'm not gonna touch the skull. Okay, so now we're at a point where, okay, it kind of looks all right. On my Cintiq, it actually looks better than on my screen over here. It looks very cartoony. I think because my Cintiq, I edited the backlighting so it appears lighter. So let's go ahead and make a new layer. Let's do a soft light, and now we'll add in that texture brush over it. Oop, and I'm going to mask out our hat here. So I'm gonna allow the back of the hat to be darker to really push the eye towards the front. Yeah, I like the look of that. Then up in the front, I'll let it be a bit lighter, or where I want some of the folds to be more of a focus. Yeah, something like that. Let's do another one. I'll do a multiply, but I'll be very conscious of how I'm laying this on. I'm actually going to let me try the dirty nature brush here. Like I said, I like to lay it on heavy first, and then I'll go back and I'll lighten the layer. Opacity. So you can see what that looks like before and after. Because with such a worn leather, you want it to read as dirty and worn and give it some character. So I like to have a bunch of layers that allow me to express that. And I try to have some color nuances where the base I'll usually keep pretty formatted in a way where it's the same all throughout. But I definitely like to have fun with color, so I'll lay in, like you can see some reddish tones up here, and that creates a bit more interest in that area that we want to direct the eye to. something like that. And then on top of all of this, I'll make one more new layer. This is where I'll do subtle highlighting throughout, because we got not a lot of time left. And I want to at least give it just a quick punch of highlight here. It's still not fridge worthy yet. Lights and Sea says, would you ever consider become a full-time gallery artist, producing art for gallery shows, etc.? I've definitely thought about it, but I actually really, really love my job at CG Cookie. So like, I don't ever see myself leaving this job on my own terms. I think if somehow, for whatever reason, the company went under or I was let go, then yeah, I definitely think I would pursue some kind of a career in gallery art. But as of right now, I love CG Cookie. I love working for this company. So no, I don't see it happening anytime soon. But I do con shows on my own time anyway. So like, I feel like I get to live both lives, like the life of a full-time artist and then as a freelance artist doing my own stuff. Not quite as to the extent that real freelance artists are doing their work, but I definitely feel like I get to dabble in it enough. You can see like these pockets are too deep. And then on the top, I definitely want to cut in, give more of that impression of where the leather is wrapping around and having these crevices. Faithful Imagination says, how would I'm assuming you encourage people with mental illness who want to become professional artists? I actually had this conversation over this past weekend with someone that kind of was in that boat. A lot of it, I think, comes down to what I was talking about. You really need to surround yourself with people that have a positive mindset and encourage you, ones that aren't bringing you down or telling you that you can't do something. I think having that kind of an attitude will really hurt you in the long run, because if you're already feeling not mentally into it, if you have anxiety or I have a few friends that have some of these problems, and the way that they overcome it is by doing their best to be positive, or at least coming to us when they feel down and just asking for advice or critique. And there will always be those days that, they're having a bad day. And that's why, as friends, we're here to help pick them up, because even if you don't have a mental illness, like for example, I don't have a mental illness, but there are days where I'm feeling down on my art, and I'll go to them for critique, or I'll go to them to point out what's looking bad in the piece so that I can correct it. So I definitely think having positive influences in your life is huge, regardless of if you have a mental health issue or not. The other thing though is, if it is more of like an anxiety thing, I think learning who you are will help a lot in terms of understanding what kind of schedule works for you, what kind of schedule doesn't work for you, how you can do freelance or how you can do a full-time job and keep the anxiety levels at a reasonable and or manageable level. And a lot of it, I think, has to come with finding out who you are and then applying it to whatever it is that you're going to work on. You don't even have to be an artist. I feel like anyone that has a mental illness like anxiety or things about depression, I think you really have to find out what works best for you first and then apply it to your career, your passion. Rafa says, Tim, do you have any tips on how to draw without getting burnt out? Whew. One of the best things recently that I think I found, because I've definitely been feeling pretty close to burnout recently. I think just because with my new Kickstarter, and Drawloween was its own challenge, but then I had to do this big Halloween party right after, and I really hadn't had much time to have downtime just to like collect my thoughts and re-energize myself. And I'm always going. I'm always on the go. But there are times where I need to like I'll take a break and it'll be like 8 p.m. and I'll just go lay in my bed for like 2 hours. I just need to like not do anything and like collect my thoughts because sometimes I'm going so fast that I forget what I need to do, or I forget even while I'm working if it's looking good. I work at a weird pace where it's abnormally slow, and usually if you're stressed or you're burned out, your work will be bad. And I think it'll be very obvious to you that your work, something is wrong because your work is slipping in quality, and you definitely don't want that. Really quick, I'm adding shadows underneath here to give more of an impression that this is on top of our leather hat, because without it, it almost looks like it's sewn in, but you definitely want it to feel like it's over it, it's not sewn in. But anyways, to get over burnout though, the other thing is, as contradictory as this might sound, you got to keep going. You got to keep creating art and doing what you love. I think it comes down to sometimes doing art that you don't enjoy doing. Like if you're doing a freelance project and you're just really not liking whatever it is you're working on, like yeah, that can present its own set of problems. But then while you're working on that, maybe as like a break, take like an hour break and work on something that you want to work on. Because if you're constantly looking at something you absolutely can't stand working on, I feel like you're just taking your aggression, your anger out on that piece. I think what's helped me is with even with burnout is I'll go at night. I won't even look at my digital stuff because admittedly I don't feel as comfortable digitally as I do traditionally. So I'll go in my family room and I'll put a movie on, I'll watch it, and while I watch it I just draw. And usually it's just a character, and admittedly it's usually in like a profile view or something that is very standard for me to draw. But it's relaxing. It's almost therapeutic. I see drawing as a very therapeutic way of handling stress. So it's kind of weird that to handle the stress of my work with drawing, I have to draw in a way that I feel comfortable with. But it's true. And a lot, once again, it comes back to understanding how do you work and what circumstances do you work best under. I didn't even think that was really a thing, but the more that I'm watching these videos talking about how to educate properly or how to motivate yourself properly, just because I feel like a lot of the way I teach is on mentally teaching you to believe in yourself, because I really do believe as an artist, that's more important than any technical skill that you could possibly learn. And the more that I'm doing this, the more that I'm seeing how a lot of it comes down to understanding who you are, your pros and your cons, and how to manage your faults and how to hoist or like lift up your pros, the things that you're good at. And that's what will make you successful in this life. At least that's what I believe. I'm going to make our metal here more shiny. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to get over burn. Or to get over feeling burnt. I think a lot of it though does come to understanding who you are. But the best tips I've gotten from, I mean, not only the tips I'm giving, but from others, is to push through, to take breaks, to take a day off, to go travel in a way, even if it's not a big trip. It could be like to a local forest or something, forest preserve, and just like pull out a sketchbook and draw a tree or draw, I don't know, a little insect that you see. Whatever it might be, just take your mind out of whatever situation you're currently in and like refresh. One of the friends that I met recently calls it a hard reset, where they'll take a day and just kind of collect themselves. They really feel the need to energize themselves and take the day to get themselves back up to speed. And then that next day, they're good to go. Like right in the morning, they can go a mile a minute. So yeah, sorry that was kind of ranty, but Tijel says, I feel like my mental illness is being positive all the time. You know what, Tijel, for your attitude, I'm going to give you a fridge. Okay. So we're getting close to the end of our stream here. You can see what that layer did. You can see how I'm just going in and I'm refining. I'm looking at the edges that are too blocky or chunky, and I'm just going in. I'm continuing to smooth them out. I'm adding little detail areas, little pockets, little trivial pieces of dotting or whatever it might be to add another level of detail that wasn't there before. And this is my way of going about doing leather. So I'm hoping that you guys learn something while doing this. But before I leave, let me go ahead and add a quick little bounce light on the back here. I'm gonna actually choose a skin brush because grossly enough, leather is just skin. It's just cow skin though. I'm gonna grab our background color and I'm gonna start integrating this into the back of our leather material here. Actually, I'm gonna zoom out so I don't get too focused on over detailing. And you should be able to see then how these little extra additional details just round it out that much further. And bounce lighting will definitely always do that. You can see bounce lighting in different forms. Like if it's really heavy and it's very backlit, you'll see it as a rim light. And that's where it has like a very definitive edge line on it. I'm typically not the biggest fan of rim lights, but they definitely are appropriate in a lot of instances and it will help out round the character. Like there's no denying the benefits of a rim light. Yes, Digital got a fridge. Side Nor says, "Can I get some help with the drawing if I possibly post in here? Feel free to be as harsh as possible." I don't do live critiques on the streams unless if it's specific for the live stream. So if you want though, I'll be doing a critique stream in December. So if you want to save it till then, if you can, and then I'll do like a full out 10-minute paint over and live critique session. So if that's something that interests you, I would definitely look into doing that. I don't really do paint overs and critiques as much as I used to, just because I get a lot of them. It actually got to the point where I was getting overwhelmed with how many people were asking me to do paint overs or ask for advice or critiques. So that's why I try to do it now as a stream where I can knock out 9 of them, and hopefully, if you guys want to see your stuff be critiqued or streamed, then you can make that stream and be a part of it. All right, let's see what this looks like. I'm using my eraser tool to give it more of like a textured edge because it was looking way too smooth. Yeah, so you can see how that backlight really adds another level of dimension to it. I think it actually is coming off a bit strong. Let me turn it down. Maybe something like there. I like that better actually. And then a glaring mistake that I can see right now. Not only is this edge super sloppy, but if we're going to have holes in our leather here, we might as well make it go all the way through. And just like we were doing before, just punch it out. So usually whenever I finish something like this, I'll do a quick, I'll merge everything together. Now, mind you, I don't recommend doing this for client work. This is definitely a bad idea because you want separate layers so that you can send them a copy where you can edit very quickly. I'll usually blur the edge so it's not quite as daunting. and sharp because I like having the crisp areas near the area of focus. And in this case, the edge of the hat is not my area of focus. Something like that. And it may not seem all that obvious at first, but if I turn the layer on and off, like it's still a little hard to see, but it's just slightly out of focus enough where then your eye is attracted to the areas more in focus. I could probably really amplify the blur, but I'm not going to go crazy here. And then the other thing, usually if I'm finishing a piece, I'll do a quick color adjust. So we'll do a color balance. So let's go ahead and see what it would look like. Oh, that's right, the background layer color is on there too. You can see how quickly you can have fun with color and edit them on the fly. I like that. So if you turn it on and off, you can see before and after. And that is our leather stream. This was requested long time ago, and I thought it was fitting since we have a leather exercise going on right now. But if this is something that interests you, please check it out on the exercise page below. And as another reminder, we have that 25% off sale on CG Cookie for the memberships right now, and that's going all throughout the weekend. And I'm doing the giveaway right now on my Instagram. You can find it at, let's write it in here, at Von Art. And essentially I'm giving away 9 of my sketchbooks for free. And that will be probably on Monday. So if this is something that you would maybe be interested in, I would check it out. Thank you to Brother for following. And thank you guys for coming to this live stream. So hopefully we'll see you next week. I'll probably be doing something with brushes. I'm not sure what, but I really like that suggestion. And I will be most likely doing a casual one on Saturday sometime. So if that's something that intrigues you, you should definitely come to that. Now, if you followed along with me, please post in the community site that we have. We did the same thing last week with the life drawings. A lot of you posted. I was very pleasantly surprised with not only how many posted, but the quality of the life drawing session. I was really proud of you guys that submitted. So if you followed today, please submit your entry. And actually looking at mine, I think I color burned it a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to turn that down just a touch. There, that looks better to me. All right. So thank you guys again for coming. And yeah, I'm going to go get some food. So, all right. Bye, everyone. Bye. 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 And